All right, here we go. Let's jump right into it. It's the Deeper Dive presented by SuperDraft. Dave Locker and Adam Scher with you. The second of three NBA shows today. Josh Engelman and I kicked it off with the strategy show. Went 2 hours for a 9-game slate. Now we've got ourselves an 11-gamer, 5 p.m. lock on FanDuel, 5 p.m. lock on SuperDraft, running the biggest contest yet. I'm super pissed that I can't play in Pennsylvania. I already tried, and I can't. And then we've got Josh Engelman and Chris Spags coming up at 6:30, taking you all the way, full hour, up to lock for the 7:30 night slate on DraftKings. How we doing, man?
Doing good. Pretty crazy NBA day. Pretty fun day to be able to play basketball and then still have more stuff to do for the night slate. Lots of different slates has made it fun.
Yeah, there's a lot. It was tough to play leading up to lock for the 2 p.m., so I just head over to DraftKings Sportsbook. So at least I got something. You know what I mean? You gotta have something going on Martin Luther King Day. Happy holiday to everybody. Martin Luther King Day. It's a wonderful day and also a great day for basketball because we've got all but 2 teams in the NBA playing this afternoon, tonight, late at night. And Adam and I are here to get you ready for this 5 p.m. lock. We're going to do that, and we're going to get through each and every one of these 11 games with enough time for you guys to feel confident starting your lineups. But before we do, I do want you to know about SuperDraft. They're running the biggest contest. Like I said, Josh and I talked about it a lot on the strategy show. It's really a fun slate, and there's a legitimate edge over there. That's why I'm kind of pissed that I can't play because you look at the multipliers. So like Harden is 1x, meaning his fantasy points are what they are. I think John Morant's at like 1.4x today, which is insane. I think Kevin Love's at like 1.4. So I mean, Adam, there's a legitimate way to build really good lineups over there. If and really you're just taking the projections and adding, 1.4, 1.5x to them.
Yeah, normally I'm kind of slow to jump onto newer sites, but I was looking at it the other day, and it actually does look fun. It looks like you can see where the edge would be and how you can be good at it. And the contests, are reasonably sized as well. So building stuff out so that I can start playing them more is definitely towards the top of my list right now.
Yeah, I mean, I it's funny. I said to Josh, I usually hate when sites try and reinvent the wheel for DFS because there's like a way that works and a way that doesn't work.
Right.
I actually think this could work. So I'm pretty excited about it. Hopefully we get Pennsylvania up and moving sometime soon. But yeah, $20,000 contest. There's overlay there, and there's also it's $4,000 to first place. SuperDraft, they'll tell you they're the future of daily fantasy sports. They got the multiplier mode. That's where you get the 20K contest today. No salary restrictions, complete lineup freedom. You could play all the top plays if you wanted to, but that might not be the best move based on what the multiplier are for other ones. Anyway, it's the biggest contest ever, 4K up top. And all you have to do to get a little bit of added cash here is use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and get $20 free in super cash with your first deposit of $100 or more. If you use the free SuperDraft projections too, in the link, we're going to drop that into the YouTube chat. You can build your team with our free SuperDraft projections. So they got this big contest today. Sign up using the promo code AWESEMO. It tips off at 5 p.m., so get in there before 5 p.m. It's not 7:30, it's 5 p.m. Download it in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. I haven't downloaded the app yet. I've been doing it on my laptop, but you can do it pretty much from wherever. Use the App Store, download it, or superdraft.io. AWESEMO is the promo code. All right, man. Let's go ahead and jump into this. We've got 11 games. We'll kick it off with these 5 p.m.ers, and we'll start with Miami and Sacramento. Really wasn't a game that I had a whole lot of interest in until this Jimmy Butler news. Jimmy Butler has since been ruled out. Maybe an hour or so after we finished the first show, Jimmy Butler gets ruled out of this contest. It's big news. It was a 220.5 total game. The Miami Heat were 6.5 point favorites. It's still 220 now, but they're only 4 point favorites at home. What are we doing with buckets out of this one at home against the Kings?
Yeah, obviously it opens up minutes and it opens up usage. You kind of with Miami with Dragic back and with Butler in, you kind of had a little bit of a logjam between Kendrick Nunn, Butler, Dragic and Tyler Hero. Obviously, taking Butler out of that opens up a lot of minutes and usage for those guys. The last game that Butler missed was January 5th. You got 28 minutes from Hero. Dragic played 30 minutes. Duncan Robinson played 36 minutes. Derek Jones Jr. Started and played 36 minutes, and Kendrick Nunn played 28 minutes. So I think that it at least solidifies the minutes somewhat for guys like Nunn, Dragic, and Hero, where I would expect 28 plus from those guys, and then Derek Jones and Duncan Robinson should see more minutes as well.
People in chat keep complimenting you by saying that we look alike. I don't see it.
I definitely don't see it.
This guy thinks I look like. You think I look like Davis Bertans, which is just a wild insult.
Not just me.
Oh, it's just you. It's just you. But yeah. Always carrying things says Adam. You look good today. Usually more of a stone than grimy look. No, that is entirely untrue. You never look stoned. Certainly not grimy. That is insulting. I wouldn't have read it out loud if I'd read that beforehand. But would you say? I guess the easiest way for me to put it is: would you say there are top plays for Miami now?
I think that it starts to at least get close when you look to the guards. I'm getting a lot of Goran Dragic on DraftKings now. I think that I would still be setting rules to limit how much I get of Nunn, Dragic, Hero, probably still to 2, and probably like a max 3 out of them plus Robinson and Derek Jones.
Okay. On the other side, you've got the Kings, Marvin Bagley. We saw some pretty hefty ownership here. He's played 30 minutes in back-to-back games. On FanDuel, it's a lot different than it was on that first DraftKings slate, which has already kicked off. But there's also the 5 p.m. DK slate too that has some pretty good prize pools. 40%, however, on FanDuel still for Bagley. So he is definitely up there. Let me see if we haven't updated ownership yet. I believe we probably do. But yeah, look, he's coming in at very high ownership across the board. If we're giving him 30 minutes or so, people like to play Bagley at that price point.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a really good price point. One thing to point out with him is that DraftKings and FanDuel both have him listed. DraftKings is questionable. FanDuel is a game time decision.
Yeah, he's not even on the injury report.
Yeah, though. He's not on the injury report. So ignore that. Don't shy away from him for that reason. It's obviously a tough matchup against Miami, but the thing is that alongside De'Aaron Fox since the start of last year, 1.11 DraftKings points per minute for Marvin Bagley. Even if you account for the matchup and you project him for less than that, if you assume he's getting 30 plus minutes, he played 30 in each of his last 2 games. The most recent game, he lost a couple of minutes as well to blowout. So there's no real reason outside of foul trouble or something to think he's playing less than 30 minutes here. He's greater than a fantasy point per minute guy. The price tag, I think, is just wrong. So really the only argument I could see for not having a lot of Bagley would be that he's popular and he's still a volatile player. But it's certainly not a spot where I think like you have to fade because he's very clearly underpriced.
What about the rest of Sacramento? We've seen a lot of these price points on guys like Bjelica come up. He only played a few minutes at the backup 5 last time out. We actually saw Dedmon get almost all of that run, but he is $5,400 on FanDuel. De'Aaron Fox, after a few big games, has seen his salary come up, and Buddy Hield is pretty cheap. But since De'Aaron Fox has come back, and now you have Bagley healthy as well for the time being, he's been pretty underwhelming. Do you like anybody against a pretty decent Miami team in a slow-paced game outside of Marvin Bagley?
Yeah, nothing outside of Bagley really stands out. You obviously could make a price argument for Buddy Hield just because he plays so many minutes. And you could just make a talent argument for De'Aaron Fox, even though the salaries come up. But neither one at their price points or positions really stand out for me. I think that there are enough guys that do look really good, where Bagley's the only real priority for me from Sacramento.
You want to hit on anything else from either side of this game?
I think I kind of I don't want to say overlooked, but didn't point out as much as I should have that Tyler Hero is $4K on DraftKings.
Yeah. Very, very reasonably priced. That is a tough price point to get away from, even though he's one of the more volatile players. What about 44 on FanDuel?
Yeah, really good salary there too.
Okay, wasn't sure.
There obviously you're dealing with more games.
Right, a lot more games. Yeah, and you only have 6 on you only have 6 on DraftKings. So I guess that 4K has to stand out pretty significantly then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not playing the 5 o'clock slate on DraftKings, but I did play the 2 o'clock slate, and I late swapped some stuff before the show, and I was getting to like 30% Tyler Hero at that point.
Okay.
So obviously, I would have more than that on just the 6-gamer.
Right. Yeah, you're losing 3 games. Now, you mentioned something to me earlier today that a lot of the 2 p.m., 2:30, 3 o'clock games weren't really that appealing, but that was before the Kyrie Irving news, too.
Yeah, I ended up not doing what I talked to you about.
Right. I'm assuming a lot of that was because of Irving, too.
And Irving, Drummond, Beal's price tag was cheap. That Thomas Bryant was really cheap. There were a few plays that I ended up really liking from the early games.
Let's keep it moving with Houston and OKC. So the Houston Rockets have one of the highest implied totals on the day, 119. They're 7.5-point favorites with a 230.5 over under here. Also one of the highest on the slate alongside below Memphis and New Orleans, but still up there. The only other 2 games that were higher have already tipped off. Let's really get into the weeds with Harden for a moment, because he's 11-4 on FanDuel. He's 11-4 on FanDuel, and Giannis is 11-7 on DraftKings. Harden is 11K and Giannis is 11-2. I feel like, and Josh and I discussed this at length, but there's a lot more minutes upside with Harden. Giannis is a 14.5-point favorite against a bad Bulls team. I mean, what are you projecting? Well, I guess we'll wait to get to Giannis and we'll stick with Harden, but I wouldn't mind if you tied the 2 together, because, those are the 2 highest priced players. And if you're playing one, you're likely not playing the other.
Right. I mean, and I do have them projected similarly, because Giannis is the better per minute producer when Westbrook is on the floor for Houston. Harden drops down to around 1.6 DraftKings points per minute, whereas with Giannis, excluding bonuses this year, you're getting 1.85 points per minute. So they project similarly. I agree with you that obviously you have more minutes upside for Harden. There's a reason that Giannis is averaging around 31 minutes per game this year, and Harden regularly is playing 36, 37. So I feel a little bit better about Harden, but I do think they project similarly. And so it ultimately comes down to, is there more value at guard or forward, which I think there are better plays at guard than there are at forward today. And which one is higher owned as far as which one I end up preferring. Okay.
So if you had to make the call right now, where is it?
Obviously site dependent, because the slates are just so different. But if I'm looking at like the DraftKings 6 o'clock slate, I need to get the ownership up for that. Do you
5
have it in front
o'clock
of you?
slate.
Yeah, 5 o'clock slate. Do you have the ownership in front of you?
So I believe we just got an update too. So on DraftKings, actually, what slate? What would they even call it?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, what would this be called? It's not the main slate. It's not. Express.
It's not there.
It's not. Well, we'll have to find it. And we'll come.
I was like looking for it as I was talking. I couldn't.
Well, here's what I can do for you. I can give you the last ownership from the 2 to 5 PMs and try to decipher a little something here. Giannis finished. I have to go and look to see what his ownership actually is, but he was 18% and James Harden was 13%. So I'd give, I guess, a slight edge to Giannis at those ownerships, but I think it's pretty much a coin flip. Okay. Yeah, Josh said he had Harden well ahead of Giannis, so that's it'd be an interesting discussion for sure.
I mean, like looking at the late swapping I did on the DraftKings 2 o'clock slate, I ended up with 30% Harden, 28% Giannis. So
okay, so real close. Is there anything else you like here? A semi-discounted Brook Lopez, Eric Bledsoe. Again, this game's staying close. It's hard-pressed to think it will, but in the event that it does, these guys see extra minutes. They're not very expensive. You could make an argument there, but it's still tough for me to really love any of these guys on an 11-game slate. Bledsoe's 5,600 though on FanDuel. Lopez 51 seems a bit too much, especially at the center position.
Yeah, I mean, for the rest of the Milwaukee guys, it's just secondary options. Like Lopez is cheap. Bledsoe's salary is affordable as well. One rule I did set was that if I do get to Giannis, I don't want more than one of the other guys. It doesn't really seem like the game where you really want to be running like Milwaukee on slot lineups out there because it's going to be pretty tough for Chicago to hang if that's the case.
Okay. Um, on the Chicago side, does anything pop up to you that you really like? I think it's a little bit tough for me to get to expensive players like Zach LaVine. I know Lauri Markkanen's price continues to hover pretty low, but he also hasn't been all that impressive. Anything from Chicago at all?
The only thing I would point out is that Kobe White works as a pivot to those Miami guys, because he can get there in a couple of ways. For one, he's one of the he's willing to shoot, and it sets up as a matchup where he can chuck some threes against this Milwaukee team. But he also would get a little bit more run, most likely, if Milwaukee blows them out. So, not saying that he's any sort of priority whatsoever, but he's the guy that I probably like the most from Chicago.
Okay, let's keep it moving then. Get to some of these good games coming up here. One of them. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm dumb.
You jumped games, but they started at the same time, so I just let it go.
Yeah, next time help me out with that. I just did a 2-hour show and I'm losing it, man.
Well,
we're talking about Giannis,
and we hadn't really started the other game, so it didn't matter.
I know that's true. We were talking about Giannis, and I kind of just lost it. But I guess we just covered all of Milwaukee and Chicago.
Right. Yeah.
All right, that'll work. Houston and OKC though, like I said, one of the higher totals on the slate. Houston, the second highest implied total behind the Bucks. With James Harden, we got into that. What about Russell Westbrook, who has seen a nice hike in minutes recently? I think that price point is very reasonable. Now, you don't have Trae Young on the DraftKings slate like we did earlier, where they were very similarly priced. So you have Harden on Westbrook on DraftKings at 9,800, and then 9,500 on FanDuel. He's not the same Westbrook that he was in OKC, obviously. But he's also a 1.39 DK point per minute player. Like, you're still getting good numbers from Westbrook. He's still jacking up 20-plus shots every single night.
Yeah, and the good thing about Westbrook, it's something I mentioned in the deep dive article today, is he's averaging 1.3 points per minute, DraftKings points per minute without bonuses this year. But and that's good per minute production anyway, and he's playing a bunch of minutes. But he also has a really high ceiling, because we're seeing some teams really game plan to take Harden out of games and forcing Westbrook and the three-point shooters from that team to beat them. Obviously, you don't really know prior to a game if it's going to go that way or not. Harden, obviously, when he has the opportunity, is the primary guy on the Houston offense. But there are enough games where you do see teams doubling Harden early, picking him up at half court, forcing Westbrook to beat them, where there are some games where you just get these monster games from Westbrook because that's what teams are allowing them to do right now. So I would say the ceiling for him is a little bit higher than it is for most players that average the same or average similar per minute production, which is nice. So I do think that he's a pretty appealing option, especially if you can't quite get the Harden. You still get exposure to a really high upside piece from one of the highest projected offenses on the slate.
Yeah, I like Westbrook quite a bit here. I just think that price point is still too reasonable to pass up. And on FanDuel, where you've got the 11 games, Westbrook coming in at only 10% ownership. I think that's more than solid at that price. He's one of the top price guys that I like to get to. And I think while you're not expecting the same numbers as James Harden, 9,500 is still super nice in a game that should be high scoring. He's still a monster usage player, even playing with James Harden on the same team. Legitimate triple-double threat. Not like he was, again, in OKC, but still a threat to go out there and just throw up a 25, 10, and 13 type of game and be phenomenal. He's actually scored 30-plus real points in 4-plus games. Not a great shooter, but enough volume is going to get it done anyway, so I'm all about it. What about OKC? Definitely site-specific on some of these guys, but do you like the Thunder here at the guard position?
I think that Chris Paul looks pretty good. He's only 6,800 on DraftKings. I think he's like 7K on FanDuel.
6,800.
Okay, 6,800. Yeah, I knew he was cheap. So the minutes are there. He after a slow start to the season, he's averaging up around 1.1 DraftKings points per minute for the year. It's a paced up spot against Houston for OKC, which is nice. So I think that he stands out the most out of that group.
Do you like anything else? Steven Adams to me, especially with Noel back, takes some shine off. He's $6,000 on FanDuel. Meanwhile, the rest of these guys, Gilgeous-Alexander 7,700 on FanDuel, Dennis Schroeder 5,400.
Paul, by the way, 7,100 on FanDuel.
I thought you said I said 68 on DraftKings.
Oh, yeah, no. I knew you were 68 on DraftKings.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, Gallinari at 5,900 small forward on FanDuel I think is pretty appealing. I agree with you on Adams that having Noel back, it's just really easy for him to get in that like 28 to 30 minute range as opposed to playing more. So not particularly appealing there, especially because there are a couple of mid-range or upper mid-range at least centers that I think look really good.
Okay, now if we move this on, unless there's anything else from this game that you want to get to.
No.
Would you say there's priorities from this one? It seems like you're not as high as some other people on this game.
It's kind of weird because like I obviously if you can get to a lot of James Harden and Russell Westbrook, then I would say that they're priorities. Like they're two of the better plays. It's just always hard for me to say that like an expensive player is a priority because obviously it comes with it's a matter of what else are you getting in there. I think that, for example, like the Jimmy Butler news makes it a lot easier to start to prioritize those expensive guys from Houston.
Cleveland and New York. So the Knicks are 1.5 point road favorites, 222 total here. And we got a little bit of news over the past hour that helps us out a little bit. One piece of that news that might not seem significant, but definitely has relevance is John Henson's out, which means that I would assume Kevin Love gets the backup 5 minutes, which we saw last game, and Larry Nance plays around 25 minutes. I really like Kevin Love today. I think depending on site, but $6,900 on FanDuel to me is a phenomenal price on Kevin Love, especially given that he's been playing huge minutes recently, up significantly from where we were only a couple weeks ago. Larry Nance is $3,800 himself. Now value is definitely opened up, and on a later slate like this, opposed to the early one, there's more value that was already there to start the day. But I think Kevin Love and Larry Nance are two guys that I'm both very much willing to play at their respective salaries. Where are you at on Cleveland?
Yeah, I think Cleveland as a whole is actually a lot more appealing today than normal because New York sucks defensively. You have the Cavs starters playing more minutes than they were earlier in the season. Kevin Love, like you said, getting the backup center minutes is really appealing. And then Larry Nance basically backing up both Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson allows him to get into the mid-20s, and he's still really cheap. So all of those guys, Love, Thompson, and Nance, I think are in line to play pretty big minutes and are in a spot to be productive. But then also looking to the backcourt, you have Colin Sexton, who is playing 34 minutes in competitive games now, has a usage rate between 27 and 28%. His price tag has come up, so he's not a priority, but I think he's still reasonably priced for this matchup against New York. And then Darius Garland at 5K, kind of the same thing as Sexton. So there have been a lot of slates this year where you get to Cleveland, you kind of just write off the whole team. But here, I think you can make a pretty reasonable argument for any other guys that get, main minutes.
Yeah, I think so too. I would say we had someone comment or asked in chat. He says, trusting Kevin Love, ? Well, for me, it's less about trusting him and getting him than it is getting him at $6,900.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, it's not even someone that I find that scary to trust. Like he's the biggest thing with him has been his minutes this year, but recently he's just playing big minutes. So he's generally not one of those guys that I feel like uncomfortable putting in my lineups.
Nope, especially not at that price. Like you said, especially now that he's getting the minutes. Listen, with someone like Kevin Love that on the season is averaging like 1.2 or 1.18, something like that fantasy points per minute. Once you get him up into that 34, 35 minute range in a competitive game, I mean, there's no reason to shy away from that whatsoever. Talk to me about the other side of this one, unless you wanted to get into like Sexton or anybody else and Darius Garland.
No, I already mentioned them, so I'm good.
Okay. New York Knicks. What are you doing with guys like Marcus Morris, who right now projected for a lot of ownership, actually more ownership than anyone else on this slate on FanDuel? We will get updates. Maybe that changes. But as of now, a lot of projected ownership on a guy like Marcus Morris going up against the Cavs.
Yeah, and I think for good reason. He's for the season been playing in competitive games normally like 32, 33 minutes. We've seen even more than that recently. The Cavs have been the second least efficient defense over the last month, and for the season they've been one of the worst defenses, all season long. Morris is second on the team in usage behind Julius Randle, and now they're playing without RJ Barrett, who's their third highest usage guy. So potentially a little bit more, and just a really really cheap price tag on Morris. Like, he does not need to be very productive on a per minute basis to at least be adequate at 5600 on DraftKings, for example, and there's clearly plenty of upside there. So I do think he's a good value. I think that he's really useful at a forward position that's not nearly as deep as the guard positions. Looking to Julius Randle too, obviously more expensive than Morris, but I think still affordably priced, playing 34 plus minutes in competitive games. The leading usage guy on the team, one of the leading assist guys, one of the leading rebounders, really just does everything. He's averaged 1.25 fantasy points per minute since the coaching change, and so I think he looks good too. And a cheap price tag on Alfred Payton. It's kind of scary to me how much interest I have in a game between the Knicks and the Cavaliers.
Yeah, I know. Generally speaking, it doesn't serve us very well. But and look, Alfred Payton is discounted as well. No RJ Barrett. I think Payton hurts Barrett more than Barrett hurts Payton. But at the same time, like, there is a lot to like here. And look, the truth is, and we've already discussed this, but the truth is, it all comes down to how cheap they are. If Marcus Morris was 6,500, you wouldn't even be talking about him. And if you
Right.
were, you wouldn't be talking
And
about him.
also one other thing to point out, because there's always this negative connotation with the Cavs and the Knicks, not only because they both suck, but because they've both been really difficult rotations for most of the year. The Cavs are shorthanded right now as far as their bench guys. Brandon Knight's out, John Henson's out, Dizic is out, and
Porter.
yeah, Porter is out. So you've been having more or tighter rotations there. And then New York had the coaching change, and since Fizdale, you've gotten tighter rotations there too. So I think that's something to keep in mind. If you kind of are biased against these teams.
Yep, I think so too. Let's just fully recap this one, make sure we didn't miss on anything, because like you said, there is a lot here from this game that stands out. Kevin Love, Nance, Marcus Morris, Alfred Payton's pretty interesting. You had mentioned Julius Randle as well. Anybody else?
I mean, you can take tournament shots on like Robinson. Reggie Bullock played 34 minutes last game. He's obviously not the most appealing per minute guy, but he's cheap. So I think the priorities for me are Love, Morris, Randall, Payton, and I like Nance as a value.
Okay. Let's get to what's projected to be the highest scoring game on the slate. Memphis at home against New Orleans. The Grizzlies have won 7 straight, man. They're playing good basketball. They're 3-point favorites. They have a 122.3 implied total. So my apologies. They have the highest implied total on the entire slate, not the Bucks. The 241.5 total. This opened at 238.5. It keeps on climbing. So no Derek Favors, but Drew Holiday is playing, right? So that means that we are left with the starting lineup looking like this: Lonzo Ball, Drew Holiday, JJ Redick, Brandon Ingram, and Jackson Hayes. I really liked Lonzo Ball a lot. I wouldn't say that you can't play him, but with Drew Holiday in, it definitely takes quite a bit of shine away from him. But you've got Jackson Hayes starting. You have Brandon Ingram, who's been playing phenomenal basketball. Let's start it off with the Pelican side of this one, and then we'll close it out with the home team, Grizzlies. Because no favors, pretty significant development here. Jackson Hayes, though, $4,100. Lonzo Ball on FanDuel is $6,700. All of these guys are somewhat reasonably priced. Brandon Ingram is coming in at Brandon Ingram is where'd he go? Where'd you go, fella? $9K. So what are we doing with the Pels?
Yeah, I think that it's obviously a really interesting team here, because starting in the front court with Favors out, you also have Jahlil Okafor out. So Jackson Hayes should get as many minutes as he possibly can handle here. The only two bigs, or the only two centers they have, are him and Nicola Melli. Someone confirmed that with one of the Memphis Pels beat writers, that Hayes and Melli were the only two centers available. And he said that, yeah, Gentry had asked the media if anyone could give them 10 to 15 minutes against Valanciunas, and nobody volunteered. So it is just those two that are there. So you should get a lot of minutes from Hayes. Melli, obviously would be the beneficiary if Hayes gets in foul trouble or something. But I really just want to get Hayes in as many lineups as I can. And then Drew Holiday's price is really affordable, where I was with you. I really like Lonzo if Drew was going to be out. And I still think Lonzo is a reasonable secondary option. But it was an elbow injury for Drew. He's been doing on-court work for over a week. He should be more or less, fully ready to go. So I think that getting, $7,200 on DraftKings for Drew is a really good salary. Brandon Ingram, on the other hand, someone that I've been rostering a lot of, his salary is pretty much in line with Drew being out now. So getting more usage or giving up usage to Drew, giving up some assist opportunities to Drew makes Ingram a little bit overpriced for me.
How would you prioritize the Pels today?
Hayes, Drew, Lonzo.
Ingram?
Yeah, Ingram.
Okay, on both sites?
On FanDuel, I would say Hayes. Obviously, there's opportunity cost at center, but Hayes, Lonzo, and I'd still go Drew, Lonzo, Ingram. Hart's still a reasonable value too, but he does, potentially lose some minutes.
Any concerns over Drew's minutes?
Not really. I mean, a little bit, since we haven't, explicitly gotten that he's not going to be limited, but it was an elbow injury. He has been doing on-court work. It's not like it was an injury that keeps him from staying in shape. So I think he should be fine.
On the Memphis side of things, it's also very interesting. Joval is beginning to get more consistent minutes. Let's hope that that continues. He's 6,500 on FanDuel specifically. I really like that price point. We mentioned Hayes, and here's where you talk about opportunity cost. One of those players that is also pretty appealing would be Jonas Valanciunas, $7,100 on DraftKings. It's a good spot for him. Jackson Hayes defensively really isn't bad, but Joval's just such a phenomenal per-minute guy that if he's going to play up around 30 minutes, it's hard not to like him. Ja Morant, I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but something I mentioned to Josh today, though, is really just simply put, this game with a 241.5 total is like wildly appealing overall. And Ja Morant's minutes have been up. And if he's going to play 35 minutes in a competitive game and his ownership is going to stay as low as it is, let me just make sure that we're still down on that ownership, because earlier it was super low. Ja Morant is on FanDuel. We've got him at 5%. So obviously there's some risk there, and he is a bit expensive, and there's a lot of good guards. But Valanciunas at 12% and Morant at 5% in a game that should easily see the most points on the slate.
Yeah, I think that Valanciunas is really interesting, especially as you said on FanDuel at 6,500. Not that he's overpriced at 7,100 on DraftKings either, but on DraftKings you have a $7,500. Or actually, I guess it's a different slate on DraftKings, so never mind. So you're seeing the minutes trend up. He has played, 27, 28, 30 minutes recently, and he's a really productive player. So I like Valanciunas a lot. Morant's a little bit more difficult for me because there is so much guard value.
Right.
There's also high upside mid-range guys like Drew Holiday, like Chris Paul that we've already talked about. And Morant's usage has been down since his injury. His minutes look good, playing 32, 33 minutes in competitive games, but he's just at a price point where it's really tough for me to prioritize him over some of the other guard options.
Okay. Do you like anything else from Memphis outside of guys like Joval that we talked about? And I think I like Morant a little bit more, but I get the whole prioritization thing. It's tough.
No, I mean, outside of that, it's just kind of secondary guys for me. Like, it's an appealing game. So obviously guys like Jaren Jackson and Dylan Brooks have ceilings, but I don't want to point out, everyone from the game.
Charlotte, yeah, and we have 11 games anyway, so you don't need to if you don't like them. Charlotte and Orlando, this is one where we don't need to spend a ton of time on. It has a ridiculously low total. Charlotte averaging 94 possessions per 48 over the last month. I mean, they're playing so slow that the Bucks, who lead the league in pace, are averaging 11 more possessions per game than the Charlotte Hornets. It's insane. Orlando, meanwhile, also playing at a bottom 7 pace over that span, bottom 5 pace on the season. This game has a 206 total. It is super low, but I still think Devontae Graham is just way too cheap across the board, given his upside, given the 37 minutes that he's been playing in regulation. How are you focusing on either side of this one between the Hornets and Magic?
Yeah, I think that Vooch is the guy that stands out to me from Orlando just because, yeah, the game is, or Charlotte plays really slow, as you mentioned, but that's really the only negative here for me. Charlotte, not a great rebounding team. They give up a ton of points in the paint. Vooch has averaged about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute for the season. He should play around 33 minutes here, assuming that the game is competitive throughout. So I think he's underpriced and looks like a good option. You could, obviously make arguments for Aaron Gordon and Evan Fournier as plays as well, but Vooch is the one that really stands out from Orlando. From the Charlotte side, I agree that Graham is underpriced. My issue is just that Orlando does play well defensively, and this should be a slow game. And there's a lot of really good guard options today. So I don't mind getting to Graham, but I think that I would rather get to, guys like Drew Holiday or Chris Paul.
All right. Yeah, 10th most ownership on FanDuel right now, and the whole slate is going to Devontae Graham. So he's definitely somebody that we're paying attention to. He's not going overlooked, which would make him more appealing, but I still like that $6,800 price point. I don't like the pace of this game. I don't love the matchup, but I think when you get Graham at that salary, it's pretty easy to get there. Anything else from Orlando or Charlotte?
Nope.
All right, we got to Milwaukee and Chicago. Let's keep it moving here with Boston and the Lakers. So we're through. Let's see. I'm going to make sure we got to every one of these 5 p.m. games. Not used to going with the FanDuel specific approach here. So we're through the 5 p.m. games. That's DraftKings. That's done. Let's do this. We've got 22 minutes. So I'll ask you this before we move on. On DraftKings, where you have the 5 p.m. games, who would you say are your core plays there so people can begin building this while they listen to us get through the final 5 or 6?
Yeah, so value-wise, I think you're looking at Hayes, Hero, Dragic, Bagley. And then as far as guys that you're paying for, I like Harden, I like Giannis pretty similarly, but they're both towards the top. And then Westbrook, Kevin Love, Vooch.
All right. Moving on. Oh, hey, by the way, the promo code Deeper Dive, one word, will get you 50% off your first week at Awesemo Plus membership, all access, platinum Awesemo Plus subscription, ownership projections, player projections, all of our tools that are developed and used by Alex Baker himself, Awesemo himself, all of our premium written content, the lineup builder, and so much more. We have the premium Slack as well, the Slack chat. So if you join, hop in there, say what's up. We got a good community talking DFS all day long. It's awesemo.com/join. When you check out, use the promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, will get you 50% off your first week. And if you want, you can get that Fantasy Cruncher add-on as well upon checkout. Let's go to the Boston Celtics and the LA Lakers. Let's talk about the Boston Celtics first. We've got the C's coming into this one at home, TD Garden, as slight dogs. Anthony Davis is going to play, 3-point spread here, 226 total. Anything you like from the Celtics?
I like the pricing on DraftKings. It's all, they're pretty affordable there. You have Kemba as the most expensive guy at 7,400, and then Tatum, at 69, Brown 61, Hayward at 56. I think those are all really affordable salaries. It's obviously not a great matchup against the Lakers. They're better defensively now that they got Anthony Davis back as well. But you're talking about a team where the offensive production isn't focused on like one or two guys, but it is focused on this group of 4 basically. So a large percentage of the points Boston scores are going to come from this group, and 1 or 2 of these guys should be able to outperform their salaries. So I think that Hayward looks like the best value to me, followed by Tatum, Kemba, and then Jalen. But they all look pretty similar, and I kind of like the idea of just mixing and matching them throughout lineups.
Okay, so the Lakers side, unless there's anything else from Boston that interests you, I don't really love the Boston side of this game. I have a lot of respect for the Lakers defense as well. But this game, look, it 226 total. It should see, it's not like a slog fest between Charlotte and Orlando. I'm not saying that, but I'm definitely not super enthusiastic about it. And then on the Lakers side, I mean, you get Anthony Davis back, who's available to play tonight. What does that do for this entire Lakers team?
Yeah, it makes it so obviously you're a little bit less interested in someone like LeBron. It makes it really hard to get to Kuzma or the centers. Their prices had come up anyway. So I think really we're back to where we have been for most of the year, where it's LeBron James and Anthony Davis and nothing else really matters. I think that the salaries on both of them are still pretty affordable. LeBron doesn't take a huge hit with Davis out there because for the
He just
season, his
assists
rebound.
way better.
Right. His assists are better with Davis on the floor. His rebounding hasn't taken much of a hit because when Davis isn't on the floor, you're getting 48 minutes of JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. So LeBron still isn't, grabbing tons of rebounds. It's basically just been a usage thing for him. So, you could argue that the ceiling's a little bit lower with Davis out there. But overall, I think LeBron's still a good option. And then Davis is a good option as well. Like he's 10,200. This is a player that there maybe is a little bit limited since he missed so many games, but at the same time it's not like it was a knee injury or anything like that. So I would expect mid 30s minutes from Davis at a pretty reasonable price point. So I put him behind LeBron, but I think that they're both pretty good options here.
You have 6 players above 10K: Jokic, Towns, Davis, LeBron, Harden, and Giannis on FanDuel. Would you put LeBron and Davis in the middle of that pack?
I would put yes.
Okay.
Yep, right in the middle.
By the way, our sponsor, SuperDraft, like I said, running that $20,000 contest, 4K to first, still a lot of spots open, so it's going to overlay. There's no question about it. $12 to enter. Use the sign-up code AWESOMO. Get $20 in free super cash when you make your first deposit of $100 or more. You get 17 minutes to go. It's definitely going to overlay. $4,000 up top, and it's very easy to set a lineup. From a research perspective, you can also use the free SuperDraft projections at awesemo.com. But from a research perspective, it's not going to take you a lot of time. Definitely throw a couple entries in there. Give yourself a shot at that $20,000 prize pool. All right. Keep it moving here. Do you want to get to anything else from the Lakers outside of LeBron and Davis?
No, I don't think anything else really matters.
As it usually doesn't. Minnesota, Denver, battle between the two bigs here. So Denver Nuggets ended up blowing that game late to Indy, losing by like double digits or 9 or 10 points yesterday at home. They're playing their second of a back-to-back tonight. Another very slow-paced team in the Denver Nuggets. 109.3 total for them, 112.3 implied for the Timberwolves, and a 221.5 over-under. Timberwolves 3-point favorites over the Nuggets at home, but a lot of that has to do with the injuries that the Nuggets suffered over the past week or so. Let's start off with Karl Anthony Towns, who's finally back in action, heading up against Jokic and the Nuggets.
Yeah, still not really sure how many minutes he'll play. We saw, around 30 in each of the last 2 games. The salary hasn't come down either, and there is a lot of opportunity cost at center today. So I'm not really interested in Towns, but it obviously has a negative impact on Gorgie Jang, and you have Vonleh and Reed no longer in the rotation.
All right. Do you have any interest in anyone else for Minnesota now that Jeff Teague and Trevion Graham are gone?
I think Wiggins looks like the best option to me. He's only 6,600 on DraftKings and 6,100 on FanDuel. Denver hasn't been as good defensively lately, and they are shorthanded, as you mentioned. So, and they've actually been playing. Actually, no, they've still been really slow. Sorry, they're 26th in pace. But they haven't been playing as well defensively. So, and I think that we talked about it before. Wiggins has actually been a bit better with Towns on the floor this year. So he looks like the most appealing option to me from Minnesota. You could make a case for a $5,100 or $4,800 Napier, depending on your site as well.
Towns comes back. Wiggins triple doubles.
Yeah.
That's no accident. No, but in all seriousness, when you take that defensive pressure away from Wiggins, who was shooting his effective field goal percentage was 8% worse with Towns off the floor. That's pretty significant. And his shot volume really hadn't changed that much. So I like Wiggins at 6,100. And like you said, the Nuggets defensively, they've been okay this year, but nothing like the top 5 defense they were last year. Also dealing with some pretty significant injuries. How about the Nuggets side of things? Nikola Jokic is $10,000 on FanDuel. The rest of this team, really, I'll let you break them down because I want to make sure we get all these games in time so people can set their lineups. But Jamal Murray's out, Gary Harris remains out, and Paul Millsap is out.
Yeah, I think pretty site dependent. DraftKings, they are priced up pretty heavily. Jokic looks okay at 9,400. I think he's a pretty decent option. He's obviously been really productive without Millsap or Murray on the floor this year. 32% usage rate, 33% assist percentage. Will Barton is, I would say, the second best option for me on DraftKings, but even he's priced up to 7,800. And in their last game, he wasn't getting those backup point minutes. They were going back to PJ Dozier. On FanDuel, though, the pricing much more affordable. Will Barton only 6,600, I think, stands out as a great option. But then you also have only 4K on Monte Morris and Jeremy Grant, who both should play 30 plus minutes, or into the low 30s, I should say. But neither is overly productive on a per minute basis. They're just both really cheap on FanDuel.
Okay, so I guess we can close this one out.
Yeah.
Let's talk Utah and Indy. Indy also playing their second of a back-to-back on the road. So take that for what it's worth. Wouldn't expect this game to see a boatload of scoring either. 215.5 totals. Actually, the second lowest on the slate. The Jazz are 7-point favorites at home. I guess, see, with FanDuel, it's way different. You don't have it on DraftKings. You do, by the way, have a DraftKings slate locking at 7:30, and that means Josh Engelman and Chris Spags will be taking you up to lock at 6:30, so be sure to tune in for that. But as of now, looking at the Utah Jazz, what are your thoughts here? Mike Conley, by the way, how about that? $4,100.
Yeah, 4,100 in his second game back. He only played 15 minutes.
15 minutes, yeah. And I'm saying it's just an incredible fall from grace from where he's been.
Well, what it means is that in a game or two, the sites are probably going to be too slow in fixing his price, and he's going to be like 80% owned.
Yeah, and he's going to have 15 fantasy points.
Yeah, that too. So, I mean, only 15 minutes for him last game. Obviously, a pretty unappealing game here overall. Indiana's been good defensively. They played a slow pace. Donovan Mitchell's still very affordably priced, as is Rudy Gobert. Mitchell, as Conley's minutes ramp up, you could see a little bit more production taken away from Mitchell, but it's not like he had gotten a huge bump with Conley being out anyway. So not too concerned about that. More of a salary play and minutes play on him. Only 6,500 on FanDuel. I think that stands out as one of the clear top options.
Okay. Clear top options for the game or for the slate?
Slate.
Do you want to get to anything else for Utah?
Not really. Gobert is just kind of a secondary guy for me. Like, he's 8,300 or 8,100, on DraftKings, which is a really, really good price point. And I think that makes him a good play. But when you're looking at the center position, you still have, in the next two games we have coming up, you have Hassan Whiteside for even less, and you have DeAndre Ayton without a backup. So, or without his normal backup. So it's still hard to say that Gobert is my favorite center.
What about the Indy side? Second of a back-to-back on the West Coast. Domantas Sabonis is above the 9K mark on FanDuel. Looking over the rest of this team, Jeremy Lamb, my God, that performance yesterday was pretty much as bad as it gets.
He
went scoreless in 22 minutes, by the way.
Okay, I was going to say, I wasn't sure what you were referring to other than I knew he had played 22 minutes.
He literally did not score a point.
Yeah, his minutes have been all over the place too recently. Like, when he plays well, he can still get up into the high 20s, but it's tough. You don't get a lot of leach when your backups are when your backup is Aaron Holiday, and then potentially you could get TJ McConnell taking some minutes too. So it's not a good matchup. The only thing that I would point out really is that Sabonis is only 7,900 on DraftKings. He's obviously a very, very good producer and really capable of getting it done in any matchup, but it's just still not a really appealing spot. Malcolm Brogdon at 6,700 would be my top guy on FanDuel from Indiana.
Yeah, top guy from Indiana. I still don't like much from the Pacers at all in this spot.
No, I agree completely.
We got two games to go here. Phoenix, San Antonio. Phoenix Suns at home. I think this is an interesting game. They're 4.5-point favorites. You have a 230-point total. The Suns have a 117-point implied total here. It all comes down to salaries, though, and Ricky Rubio's 6,300. Devin Booker's 8,900. Kelly Oubre, last I looked, he participated in shoot around, but we're still waiting on his status. So
I think he's listed as probable.
Is he probable now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he did go through shoot around. But what are your thoughts? Let's start with the backcourt. Ricky Rubio, $6,300 on FanDuel.
Yeah, the FanDuel price on Rubio is insane.
Yeah,
it's
really
kind of like it's just like the Donovan Mitchell price, where you kind of just it's just wrong. There's not, you don't want to overthink it. It's not even like it's a bad matchup here against San Antonio. So Rubio 6,300 on FanDuel, I think stands out as a great option. On DraftKings at 7,100, it's not quite as appealing, but it's still not a bad price there. Devin Booker's salary up to 8,600 coming off of a monster game against Boston. I think that it's more of a tournament option than anything, because obviously he can go out there against anybody and go nuts, but I don't think he's one of the better point per dollar plays. The other guy that stands out though is DeAndre Ayton, who is only 8K on FanDuel. He's 8,300 on DraftKings. Aaron Baines is doubtful for this game. You'd already seen DeAndre Ayton be reinserted into the starting lineup and playing big minutes. Now you don't even have Baines as someone to steal minutes from him. It's basically him and I would assume Check Diallo playing the center minutes. So he should get 34 plus minutes. It's not a bad spot against San Antonio. He's averaged 1.24 DraftKings points per minute this season, 1.12 since being drafted last year. So I think that even though the salary started to come up, he still looks like a really good option. He's my top guy on DraftKings from Phoenix.
Okay. Anyone else from the Suns before we talk Spurs?
Nope.
All right, let's close it out. Well, we got one more game after this. We'll close this game out with the Spurs side of things. DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge, both of whom were very popular plays the other day in a favorable matchup with discounted price points. LaMarcus Aldridge not getting a lot of ownership on FanDuel, only 7% right now. DeMar DeRozan coming in 8,800, 3% projected ownership on him. That price tag, I mean, I would take Devin Booker there, but DeMar DeRozan has been playing markedly better over the past few weeks. I mean, what a significant improvement from what we saw earlier in the season. It still seems a little bit difficult to get there, but it is the Phoenix Suns. They are a team that plays at an elevated pace. They are a bad defensive team. How are you getting to these Spurs tonight?
Aldridge really, really stands out at 6,800 on DraftKings. It's just a complete mispricing, I think, kind of similar to what we were talking about with guys like Mitchell and Rubio on FanDuel. He's 7,500 on FanDuel, which I think is good too. But you're talking about 33, 34 minutes normally from Aldridge in competitive games. For the season, he's averaged 1.09 DraftKings points per minute. At that salary, you really just need him to play to his season average, and you're going to be happy with what you got at his price tag. He obviously can do better as well. One thing that I did notice that was really interesting to me, and it's obviously a small sample, so I'm not reading too much into it, but DeAndre Ayton ranks in the 98th percentile in defending against post-ups so far this year. Obviously, he's only played 12 games, and he doesn't have a reputation as a great defender, but that kind of just stood out to me because Aldridge is one of the leading post-up players in the league. It's not doing anything to detract from Aldridge. Just kind of thought it was an interesting stat, but Aldridge is clearly underpriced here.
Yeah, no question. And Aldridge is always going to be a top post-up guy in the league. It's, him and Embiid up there every single season. Do you like any of these kind of secondary options outside of the guys we've discussed already?
Not really. I mean, DeJounte Murray, kind of the same as always. He's cheap enough to where if he gets to the top of his minutes range and gets 30, 31 minutes, it probably means he's playing really well and he'd be a good guy to have. His median projection, though, is going to be 26, 27 minutes, and Derek White, eating the rest of those. You still have Rudy Gay out, so potentially a little bit more run for Trey Lyles. We saw him get
19
some more action.
minutes.
What'd you say?
Wasn't it like 19 minutes?
Yeah, I was trying to pull it up. I think it was around there. If he's playing well, potentially he could get a little bit more, but I think the most likely outcome is that you see similar to what you saw last time, where it's just kind of Lyles, Walker, Pirtle, and Bellinelli soaking up some extra minutes, but nobody really getting enough to benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ugly situation to try and project. Like, Lonnie Walker played 19 last game. Trey Lyles played 20. I don't know. Unless someone goes wild, it's hard to think any of them are going to get to where you need him in terms of like 26 minutes.
Right.
Lyles, you don't need 26 minutes, but I think there are also some pretty solid value plays. He's power forward and not center, which makes it a little bit better, but certainly not a value priority. Let's close it out here. Portland and Golden State. We'll send you on your way. So the right now the Portland Trailblazers ownership on DraftKings, and I'm spending more time on FanDuel here because it's the 5 p.m. lock. We have a full show coming up that's going to be heavily focused on DraftKings, so keep that in mind. Hassan Whiteside, though, on DraftKings for this 7:30 slate is the highest projected owned player on the day at 50%. Adam, coming in second, you want to know who that is? I'll tell you. That is Damian Lillard than Anthony Simons. So there's a ton of ownership coming in on this game for the late 5-gamer on DraftKings. On FanDuel, you're still getting some. It's just not a crazy amount. But Lillard is still up there. Whiteside and Russell are still up there. You know what? Given the context of the slate, it kind of is a crazy amount because you got 3 from this game in the top 10, and that's pretty significant.
Yeah, but only so many bodies here for the Blazers. I haven't seen if they called Moses Brown back up from the G League, but if they didn't, I mean, they only had 8 bodies last game, and they did. So Moses Brown is with Portland now, so they do have another body that would be the backup to Hassan Whiteside. But still, you should get tons of minutes from these guys. Whiteside in competitive games recently has been playing 34 plus. He played 31 against Oklahoma City, but subbed out with about 6 minutes to go in that game, down by like 20 points. So was on his way to playing 38 minutes there. He's averaged 1.34 DraftKings points per minute this year. Lillard's production goes up without McCollum from he's averaged 1.19 DraftKings points per minute with McCollum on the floor this year compared to 1.28 without him on the floor. So a bump for Lillard. Should play 38 plus minutes, assuming the game's competitive. Just still a lot of minutes to go around here. You have Anthony Simons, who played 35 minutes last game. I would expect low to mid 30s from him again. Gary Trent played 36 minutes, played the best game of his career. I wouldn't expect quite that many minutes, and I certainly wouldn't expect that production, but you still probably can get 28 to 30 minutes out of Trent. It's just a really appealing team. Golden State has been really good defensively lately. They're 8th in defensive rating over the last month, but they do play at the 9th fastest pace, and there's just a lot of minutes to go around for Portland and a lot of production to be had for guys like Whiteside and Lillard.
You think it's weird that Anthony Simons right now is getting 10% ownership at 3,700 on FanDuel, or is that just a product of the position at point guard, not shooting guard, and the decent amount of value and talent there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense because obviously you don't have the flexibility like you do on DraftKings, so you can only roster 2 point guards. So if you're rostering Simons, you're losing out on one. And there are so many underpriced players on FanDuel that, even excluding like value that's opened up like Miami, just in general, you have so many mispriced guys. Like you have Ricky Rubio at 6,300. There's one point guard. And it's, not really difficult to get lineups that look really good without going to a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy in Simons.
How about on the other side, Golden State? Close us out, Adam. I'll let you run with it. We only got a minute or two here.
Yeah, so we got Draymond Green back. Glenn Robinson is a game-time decision. Green being back takes shine off of Eric Paschall, who had a really big game last time out. If Robinson is still out, you still get some minutes most likely for Paschall, for Jordan Poole, and you would probably still have Alec Burks in the starting lineup. But Green being back does really thin things out. I think that Russell looks like the top option for me because Portland has been really bad defensively, and we know that Russell is going to lead the team in usage and have the ball in his hands a ton. I also think you can look to Willie Cauley-Stein as a value option. Played 25 minutes last game, played, I think it was 33, including overtime, the game before that, since rejoining the rotation. And then now you're going up against Hassan Whiteside, who we expect to play mid-30s in minutes. I think you could get upper 20s from Cauley-Stein again.
All right. Favorite value play on FanDuel?
Let's see. I would say Dragic at 4,600.
Okay. Hey, as always, appreciate you guys hanging out. Wish you the best of luck today. And do you want to help support us? If you appreciate what we do here and enjoy the content, the easiest way to do so is simply by hitting that thumbs up button, liking the video, subscribing, and clicking that notification bell as well. Stick around. Coming up afterwards in an hour and a half, live before lock for the night slate on DraftKings. I'm sure FanDuel is running them too at 7:30 lock. Pretty much across the industry. You got 5 games coming up. Josh Ingham and Chris Spags will take you up till 7:30 lock. As always, have a great night. It's a lot of basketball today. I'm glad this is the last show I have to do. But that means Adam and I will be back with you. Not tomorrow, only one game tomorrow overall. We will have a show, though. There will be a show. Adam and I will be back with you Wednesday on the Deeper Dive presented by SuperDraft.